Hey everybody, welcome to Pale in Comparison, a proud member of the Doof Network. In this podcast, my sister uses her knowledge of the Otherverse to take a look at Pact, Wildbow's least protagonistic work, and I try to not give away any spoilers. I'm Jenny, and Malia can convince me to read more.
I'm Malia, and Jenny convinced me to read everything else. This episode, we are covering Signature chapters 8.6 and 8.7. Before we get into that, however, I'd like to issue a spoiler warning. This podcast is filled with pale spoilers. If you don't know how much damage Charles does to Ontario and don't want us to tell you, stop now, read Pale, and come back to this podcast. As for Pact, there will be full spoilers to the chapters we are covering.
All right, first thing, Malia's graduated. Yay!
I'm sort of a lawyer.
She's sort of a lawyer. So she just has to pass the bar. There's probably some jokes you can make about the bar being, high or some shit, but I'm really lazy, so yeah. That's the laugh of someone who's never heard that
really
before.
Funny. No, I've literally never heard that.
You really
before.
never heard that before?
It's really good.
I'm kind of sad that no one's made that joke before.
Yeah, we take ourselves really seriously.
You're raising the bar. I don't know. Just so many dumb things. That's great. It was a great graduation ceremony. Vitalis and I and our kids sat, it was in a big gym, and we were keeping our kids as happy as possible. We tried really hard to yell and embarrass Malia, and she of course did not hear a thing. We did get some looks from the people around us, which I thought was kind of rich because they were yelling at their people too. So I was
right.
Vitalis is like, Malia! And he actually was like, Malia! And then, so he was trying to make it really embarrassing, and then you didn't hear anything. So
that makes me really happy.
That was disappointing. Oh man! All right.
Yeah,
well,
my fiance, his last name is starts with G, and ours starts with H, right? Or mine starts with H, and so he was kind of just ahead of me. I was lined up behind him on the stage already, and so when he graduated, I whooped, and a bunch of the professors turned around like, what the fuck? I was like, hey, professors, up on the stage. It was great.
Okay, nothing wrong with being excited. I'd be excited too. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go to the chapter summary. Checkers goes to Johannes's domain. She meets some vestiges. I don't know why. I feel like I'm having a hard time with knowing how that's pronounced, even though I feel like I've said that a lot. We're just gonna say vestiges, I guess. Sounds weird in plural. Who she trades with?
Vestiges. Yeah.
Vestiges. That's probably more right. I don't know why it just makes me think of vegetables. Who we've already talked about in this podcast, so I won't say that again. She meets some vestiges, who she trades with for information. Johannes shows up and offers sanctuary and her name back in exchange for her loyalty. He gives her a phone, and she ends up calling her mom. She performs a claimant ritual for a new name. Rose shows up with her group to state no contest, and then the newly named Mags remembers Blake and asks where the heck he is, and no one has a clue what she's talking about. What do you think of these chapters, Malia?
They were great. Johannes is scary and I hate him. I'm very proud of Mags for doing the right thing. And I really rereading these chapters was critical because I was totally convinced that she was gonna absorb Molly or whatever, and then I thought the demon was coming out of the ground, and I was just reading so fast to find out what was going to happen that I really needed to read it again to be like, oh, that's what's happening. So I liked them, but I just was waiting to be proven right, and I was not. So that was fun.
That would have been exciting. All right, we'll start with Checkers travels to Johannes's domain with Buttsack and meets some vestiges. She trades for information.
Yeah, this domain's really freaky.
Mm-hmm.
The whole why is it always sunrise/sunset? Everyone's like sitting around really tense because they're trying to act as normal as they can so they don't like literally fall apart because they're vestiges.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like all twisted up. Like it reminds me of like how Conquest twisted up Toronto during the contest.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, yeah, the first time I read it, I was kind of like, yeah, okay, reading. And this time I was like, wow, I hate this so much and it's so gross. And
It's well said.
yeah, I think that Checkers being so unraveling is kind of interesting and cool in this section because she's like very in touch with the spirit world, but also like I don't know if she like sees any innocence. And I mean we're told like 7th and 8th graders go to school in Johannes's domain. Like we know that innocents go there.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure if she sees any of them or what, because she's like in the like twilighty spirit world whatever version and not just like it's normal and I'm in school. It's really scary that middle schoolers go to school in the Pied Piper's domain.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
and I hate it and it sucks.
Mm-hmm. It's creepy.
Yeah. It. Ugh. I have to sneeze. Okay.
Ugh, I feel like I felt that. Jeez, bless you.
Thank you. But yeah, so I wasn't sure like why she took Buttsack in there and what was going on, but I guess she was like, you know, I can try to get him to work for me or I can leave him here or something. His reaction really helps me start to understand how scary this place is.
Yeah.
Because like I guess I mean others I feel like there's a rule to not start fights with each other unless the other person starts it, but Buttsack doesn't seem to think that that's significant in any way. Because I think he's just very afraid of all the like scary shit that can eat him that's in here.
Yeah.
And yeah, it really helps like ramp up the tension and make you feel like Checkers should fucking leave. But yeah, what was I gonna do? Oh yeah, the sorcerer thing. Johannes is a sorcerer. I looked through my notes that I took a long time ago about like domains and all that crap, where Wildbow talked about some of the different schools of practice. And sorcerer wasn't mentioned in any of them. And then I was like, oh yeah, Verona calls herself a nascent sorceress.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what that means. Solomon was described as a sorcerer in something in Pale. I was doing the trick Wildbow taught me last time I tried to look for boogeymen, where I was Googling things literally just in the site, which is also dangerous because then I was seeing comments and trying like not to read them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I guess it's like a glorified dabbler. Like it's like I'm seriously a dabbler. Like I dabble hardcore. Like I do a little bit of everything kind of, but also I do it well or something. And it's just funny that I feel like dabbler is seen as such a like, oh, you're a dabbler, and sorcerer is like so like fucking terrifying. And I guess it sort of makes sense that like a person who's just like not that serious and doesn't really commit to something like whatever, whereas a person who's like really good at anything you throw at them is like horrifying.
That's scary. Yeah.
So I guess that's what's up with Johannes. Do
you think, because I was reading your notes and stuff, and you put like in terms of his domain, like can't really decide what it reminds you of exactly. I was kind of curious if like you thought it felt pathy.
Oh, yeah, I guess it does a little bit. With like there being scary. I mean, especially for Checkers, she's a practitioner, so she has some protections. But it is an area that is drawing you to a certain place, and there's a bunch of scary others around, and time passes really strangely, in ways you can't quite measure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I'm not alluding it to anything. I'm just like, because I feel like I was getting vibes like that.
Yeah.
Rereading it, but okay. But yeah, so she shoots his butt. Like part of his butt off, seems like. And then I just thought it was really like funny how like he kept cursing at her after that, and she just sighs and starts like reloading her gun, and then he just like slows down and it's just like just shuts the hell up because he's like, oh fuck.
Yeah, that was pretty. I mean, I hate it when Buttsack talks to other people. Like, I feel like with Checkers, there's kind of a level of she can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when he's like talking to the Vestiges and stuff, he's like scary and bad and awful.
Mm-hmm.
But Checkers is kind of like, ugh, like stop. And so their dynamic is sort of fun. Even if I hate him in a way that it's not with other people or with other people.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's good for goblins to know things, and especially a goblin like Buttsack, who's like the lowest tier of the upper echelons or the highest tier of the little goblins or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But he, like later he like seems to know about Faisal or whatever and how he works. He knows that like there's lots of places like this. And I mean, I guess you kind of would hear about them if you're in other
Mm-hmm.
but it was interesting, like he's in a place where our characters can actually like deal with him, but he's also like very knowledgeable and resourceful and different stuff. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was like, oh yeah, there's lots of places like this, it reminded me of like Tashlet's brother.
Oh yeah.
Who is in charge of that knotted place where it's all fucked or whatever, and like, yeah. I guess this is like that.
This is kind of like that.
Yeah. But yeah, so then one of the Vestiges finds them, and it reminded me of Kenzie.
Mm-hmm.
Just little black girl with 2 buns. I was like, oh, that better not be you. But different universe, almost certainly.
Yeah, probably not. I would think.
But yeah, it was weird how the conversation the Vestiges are having when Maggie finds them is kind of weird. She like seems to imply that she would trust like Rambo cornering a Nazi, but not Maggie cornering a goblin. Like the fact that she was a girl was mentioned several times. And I was like, so like, wouldn't you trust her more or something? As opposed to like a big scary dude. Like, I don't know. But the interactions with them is interesting. It starts off as kind of like funny, the like, you named him Buttsack? Like, no, he came with the name. Like, I'm like, he can talk. Like, you don't name things that can already talk. Is that a rule of thumb?
I feel like that's a good rule of thumb. I feel like that's kind of a dick move.
She's like, no, this is your name now. You could tell me it, but I don't care. Yeah. I guess that's what nicknames are, huh?
I guess so.
But yeah, and then she's like, oh, I need to, like, I'll explain to them that they're Vestiges or whatever. And then she decides, she like looks at them and she sees that they're like torn to pieces, and rat and dog spirits have decided to like live in them, and or Johannes is like specifically put them in there or something, and one of the rats is pregnant. And I was like, I hate this so much. And it's another fun reminder that the rats and dogs are a thing for this town, if not the practice in general, and I don't know why. Yeah, Johannes has a dog familiar, or like, Faisal, it takes on the dog, and Maggie specifically was like, rats and dogs, and he was like, yeah, what of it? And I'm like, yeah, what of it?
Like, all right, this is that was creepy with like all the mice crawling around and the little kids.
I hate it. And it just like, if Johannes was letting this happen, it would be like fucking awful horrifying. But the fact that it seems to be like his design is completely disgusting and awful, and I hate it.
Yeah. No, it sucks.
Yeah.
All right. Well, probably for the next part, if you don't mind. Johannes shows up, and offers Checkers sanctuary and her name back
Woo.
in exchange for loyalty and alliance. She asks for some time to decide and a phone, and she ends up calling her mom.
Yeah, I guess this. Well, I don't know when to talk about Johannes. I guess we'll talk about like Johannes's plan later. Because we don't get it exactly spelled out, but we get some hints. And just again, like it's so fucking gross. Oh yeah, Maggie specifically says it's not a coincidence that they have dogs and rats inside them, is it? And I'm just like, Wildbow, why are you reminding me of all the stuff that I don't know and understand? I guess it's good so that in a couple of arcs, when you decide to tell me, I'll remember that it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting because Johannes in this section seems very like powerful and formidable and knowledgeable. He has this huge domain. He has all these scary others. He has an angel-ish familiar. He has just like all this shit. And then we saw Sandra, who has like a troll, and she lives alone, and she eats really well. But like her being like Johannes doesn't know enough to not fuck with the fairy really like makes me doubt his abilities, I guess. Like I think he has like a lot of power and stuff, but I think if it weren't for those earlier chapters with Sandra and her specifically saying that, I would be like, oh, she like he's got this, they're all fucked. But like because of things like that, I'm like, no, I think there's a pretty good chance that he'll do something really fucking dumb.
Even
Like
with his familiar and how strong his domain is and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he could very like obviously win. But I think there's a decent chance that he will fuck this up.
Okay.
He just the whole like, oh yeah, I'll just ask some like more powerful fairy to go get your name back. I'm like,
that's a terrible idea.
What? Like,
yeah.
What? I mean, yeah, he probably has like, he has all these like random others who owe him shit, and he has all this whatever, and like, sure, but also like, what? Anyway, but it is nice that he lets her borrow a phone. I love when he like draws a phone and then takes it off the paper and hands it to her. That was really cool. It reminded me of like Anthem and his shit.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about all the shit people can do in their domain is really cool and really fun.
Mm-hmm. And Verona still is just barely getting hot water.
Well, she's had it for what, like 3 days or something? Like, yeah.
No, that's true. She'll get it.
Yeah.
I just thought that was funny.
But yeah, and then her mom knows who she is and talks to her, and it was really sweet and really sad. And yeah.
Yeah, that was really sweet. All right, so Checkers ends up deciding against Johannes' deal, but she does negotiate for certain items. And as they're going to get the items, they end up asking each other 3 questions, and she discovers some interesting information about Johannes.
See, I feel like you skipped like the most important part of the chapter.
I forgot to write that down, but yes, she goes to see Molly first.
Molly!
And talk to Molly. She does not absorb Molly into her being.
God, I was like ready. I was so fucking ready at this point. And then later, I was so okay. So she doesn't absorb Molly, and I was so ready for this. But it was still very good. She's still giving blood. I mean, probably in large part because Sandra was like, you should keep doing those sorts of things and hold on to yourself. But also I do think she, is very repentant and very, I mean, she's the one who started doing this of her own volition. And she thinks about like, oh, maybe this is giving something back to me, because this is sort of an established part of herself. But she acknowledges like penance doesn't count for much if it's hard. So like, if it's not giving anything back to her, like it's still penance.
Yeah.
Or if it's not hard, sorry. And then makes the kind of joke about a church-going Diabolist family, which was very funny. And then also reminded me of Black Lamb's Blood and how the author was from a church-going family.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she's, talking to Molly, and she's talking about how she's considering joining with Johannes, and how Molly only ever just looks afraid, like even when she's reflecting things that weren't from her like being murdered and tortured or whatever.
Yeah.
She just is afraid.
Uh-huh.
And this is the thing that like pushes her, because she was already torn about it. She's like, well, you're treating these, vestiges completely horribly, and they're still like thinking beings who can feel things. And seeing Molly is like, no, I don't want to side with someone like Laird again. Like I don't want to fuck up in that way again. And I was like, merge into one person. And they don't, which is fine.
That would have been a terrible idea. Like, that would have
been so interesting. Okay.
That would have been such a bad idea.
But yeah, and so she apologizes to Molly, and it seems like, I don't know if this is the first time she's apologized to her, but maybe. And it's like the first thing that's ever helped Molly like become less afraid, which is really sweet and really sad and really
yeah.
And I like this part a lot. Yeah, so then we go back to the domain, and she asks Johannes for a specific list of shit.
Yeah, bunch of random shit, basically. At least at first it's like, okay, you're having chains, steel wool, lighter fluid and matches, shotgun shells, marbles, chalk, plastic buckets, not pure cranberry juice, Coke, bottled water, and some sandwiches.
And then Johannes is like, that's all? And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, so right off the beginning, it jumps from her being like, Buttsack, you won't like getting this shit for me, to chains being the first thing she says, which reminds me of, Blake binding those goblins with chains, and how goblins hate iron or whatever. And then, yeah, like, so the shotgun shells for her pipe thing, steel wool, you're like, it's a metal thing. Lighter fluid and matches, it's goblin-y, whatever. But then it's like, what is happening? Like, it just goes to like, what? And but then it's like, okay, not pure cranberry juice. Like, that's a thing to bolster herself, because that's what she wanted with Sandra at breakfast, but she doesn't, and so maybe that's what the other things are kind of for. You're kind of like, oh, okay, but also
like she likes that stuff,
right? It's just not quite clicking, but it's kind of something about goblins and chains and something about bolstering Maggie's self, or Checkers' self. Yeah. And so then he's like, oh, I'll have the Duck Knight go get it. And I'm just picturing this like big rubber duck, like a really, really, really big rubber duck in a suit of armor. And it makes me very happy. And it's probably like really, really bad and not that. But I was just like, yeah, Duck Knight.
That's funny. I've been listening to The Adventure Zone, and I just got done listening to the 11th hour, and that description's reminding me of what's his name?
The guy.
Not
I think I know who you're talking about.
What's his name? The clay. The clay knight man.
Right.
Roswell, that's his name.
Yeah.
Roswell. Yeah. So
that's fun. That's a great arc. But yeah. Big basically rubber Roswell, duck man.
But as a rubber duck. So would he like be would that Duck Knight be, if it was a rubber duck in suit armor, would it be only traveling in bodies of water? Or would, like, assuming that the suit of armor doesn't weigh it down? Or
no, I more picture that it can kind of like hop and like squeak, 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 squeak. Okay.
All right. That's a very strange imagery.
This chapter needs something lighter in it, so that's what it is.
That's true. I wish I was good at art, because then I would be trying to do some bizarre like cartoon, like drawing some bizarre art with the rubber duck in suit armor bouncing down by Johannes and all that crap. I don't know.
Bing, bing. Kind of like side to side too, like a edge to edge bouncing.
Yeah, I feel like we have very different. Because for me, I'm just imagining it like on floating down the stream.
He's got to get around the domain somehow.
I mean, well, maybe Johannes would make like a little like what is I can't think of words today or any day really, but one of the like, you know, little streams that have like the current that goes
Like
all
a
the way
canal?
around.
Oh,
Sure.
a lazy river.
Yeah, like a lazy river that just goes all
Nice.
the way around his domain.
That'd be amazing.
Only he and the duck can use it.
Johannes is wasting such a cool fucking like yeah, he could build like a fucking water park and just like have fun and like a nice time. And he's just like no.
I feel like all these practitioners, like maybe not Verona, but like yeah, I'm like you guys are like trying to do all this weird creepy shit. You literally have like your own special like place you could do anything, and you're doing this creepy shit instead of making like a roller coaster, like a theme park / like just I don't know, massage chair, comfortable bed, movie room,
Yes.
crazy awesome place, you know? And it's like, no, let's make sure we do all this creepy, depressing shit, like make a fucking living womb I'm gonna live in and just like oh, thanks. That's exactly what we fucking need for relaxation and to, you know, just make my life better. Just yeah. I don't know. But obviously we're not practitioners, so we haven't been like fucking converted to the way of insanity. Be like, let's just live in a area of like just disgusting shit. Or
did you watch Encanto?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I was like Antonio's room. Like I don't want to necessarily live outside all the time, but like a big tree and like hammock stuff and like waterfalls and like yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think I'd want to switch it up sometimes, you know?
Right. Does that like fuck with yourself, or the domain's not necessarily a reflection of yourself and you're fine? Or
I don't know. I mean, like I feel like it just depends on what your vibe is. If you're cool with going with the flow, as opposed to if you like are really static and or like if you're like if you need to be like fucking same all the time.
Well, that's true.
You know?
Yeah.
But probably just depends. Me personally, I don't know, but sounds cooler though. Change it up. We've talked about domains quite a few times though, so
it sounds so fucking cool.
It does sound cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do have to say, because we're getting to that part, all the way back in episode 1.6 and 1.7, you made a prediction that Johannes' familiar was a constellation. Not like that far off in terms of, I mean, but it's totally wrong. So I'm marking no on your list, and
that's fair.
You can add some notes later if you want, but I figured I'd update that. So
yeah, I mean it's neat that there's like an angel it seems like Faisal is an angel. Like he seems like a small baby angel, right? Like not like a full on, because Johannes said something about like, oh, I should have gotten a third choir angel to come fuck with my shit, but they sent a little one. And so I'm not sure if he's like an equivalent to an imp in the angel structure or what exactly. But basically, yeah, he has a fucking angel as his familiar.
He has a fucking angel.
The gatekeeper aspect is cool. Like thinking about like the Garden of Eden, and the angel with the flaming sword that guards it was what I was thinking about. But it's also just like, are angels just like not good in the other verse? Because demons are obviously like really, really bad. But I guess the other verse good isn't goodness. It's like the natural order. And so he can side with this shithead and it will still make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like the Bible has told us that angels can be corrupted, like angels can fall, or whatever, or have fallen, but it just feels
just potentially an interesting thought as well, because you know, like Lucifer was the angel of light, and then he was corrupted and became like Satan, who we'd probably argue is like, the head of hell and demons and all that shit. So are angels more closely related to demons in some way than
What? Oh, then?
than we think?
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, I think that they are very related. I mean, I guess it's like fairy and goblin.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're very related, but they're opposites. But yeah, I guess I was I mean, we've seen one angel in Pale, that was like in a battle scene and it made a wall and then, but I was hoping for like, I don't know, capital G goodness or whatever. But this just seems like meh, something natural order, even though he was like, Johannes was explicitly fucking with the natural order, and Faisal's like, yeah, you made a good argument, I guess. Like,
well, he's a baby angel, right? So
yeah, and he also like, it reminded me of Alpi. Alpi has a job that the universe has given her, and if she became a familiar, like she'd get a break. And this is Faisal's break.
True.
But it still seems like fucking bananas. And that got me thinking, like, because he has taken on a dog and he already was a dog form or something, Maggie was like, he was a dog then, I take it. Is like, it just feels like there's something about the whole don't take dogs and rats because demons. Like something about like angels and demons and dogs and rats and maybe, and like grandma had a cat and maybe cats are demons. I mean, I don't know that she had a demon familiar, but like it reminds me of that riddle, where it's like you have a dog and a cat and a chicken, although in this case I guess it'd be a dog and a cat and a rat, and like if you have to take them over one at a time and you have to get them all across the bridge, right? And like the dog will eat the cat and the cat will eat the rat, and like what do you do? It reminds me of that. Like demons and angels and Johannes and this town, and I don't get it. Yeah. But yeah, so we can talk about these questions, I guess. They do the whole 3 questions for 3 questions, and there's a veto, and that's kind of fun.
Yeah. So she asks like about his domain. I don't remember the exact wording.
I think it was, how did you get your domain?
And then he vetoes it because he's like, not fucking answering that shit.
It's like so fucking sus. I'm pretty sure I made some prediction that like the Briar girl had helped him with it somehow, because we know that like he established his domain without anyone in Jacob's Bell knowing, which is like defeats the purpose of a domain claim, kind of. But maybe this isn't really a domain or something. Because okay, so when he's talking about, how'd you get an angel is a familiar is question 2, and when he's talking about it, he's like, yeah, Faisal was there, but he couldn't interfere because #natural order. And we talked between rounds, and Maggie was like, or Checkers was like, between individual challenges. And Johannes goes, something like that, which means no, right? Like that means no when a practitioner talks. And so, I mean, because we know that they didn't know that it was happening. So they, the Behaims and Thorburns and all that shit, like weren't going over there to challenge it. So I'm kind of like, what if he's just challenging like one big thing? And maybe this wasn't actually really necessarily a domain claim. It was something a little different. But also, I'm trying to think of if he was the lord of this place instead of if it was a domain, if that would make much of a difference. Because we know that lords can like fuck shit up in their place, but also, but he I don't know. We don't know the rules of like how lordships work and the boundaries and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it just seems like something's weird about this. Yeah. Yeah, and then she's like, where'd you get the pipes? And like, are these his implement? Do we know that? As I thought they were, but
I'm trying to remember if they say specifically yet or not.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Blake was like, his implement, but also maybe I sort of read that in, and also what the fuck does Blake know? So, because she doesn't say like your implement, she says the pipes, and he's like, oh yeah, they're like all magical and shit, and they were used by all these horrible people to like manipulate children, and they shouldn't have had them, and I'm like, neither should you. Like, you suck. Okay. And something about the pipes being used in his domain claim. And so then I was like, was his domain claim only against children? Like, I don't know. Yeah, because it's also, it's like rare and kind of whatever to have all three of the big things. So it's, yeah,
especially a fucking angel and a huge fucking domain, and then
the Piper's pipes.
Like that's insane, right?
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, so then the third question is why, which I guess, like, why do you live your life this way? And this is Johannes's personal 10-point plan to fix the universe or whatever, and his involves like eradicating others, it seems like, which is gross. But he's like, yeah, like humans are winning, and even if they kill hundreds of us, like thousands more of us are born, and people retire and just do jack shit, and like we have spread out so much, and we're not as afraid of them, and like Solomon put these rules in place with an eye to the future, blah 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 blah, and now we're winning. And yeah, I don't know, I just have a lot of thoughts. One thought was like, they're not winning if Ur has anything to say about it. Like, if there's demons out there that can eat the universe, like, are you winning? You have no idea.
They haven't eaten the universe yet.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know how much of it they've eaten, but
yeah. And yeah, just being like, let's make these like these places where others can come and be like, indulge in their worst impulses and their worst selves, while like keeping like innocence away from them. Like, they're happy, but they're not out there like fucking with us, and then eventually we'll whatever, and let's turn Jacob's Bell into this place. Like, I'm just like, wait, you want to like establish a lordship to make all of Jacob's Bell into a shit show?
Yeah.
And it just reminds me a lot of Charles in terms of like, yeah, there are problems with the way that things are. I mean, Johanna seems very pro-Seal, whereas Charles is very anti-Seal. But it's kind of like, yeah, like there's issues and problems. And yeah, like Pact has a lot of examples of how others can really, really hurt people. And so seeing that and seeing like, yeah, like having sanctuaries away from them or whatever seems tempting and good and whatever, but also bad.
Yes.
Also, he only has one eye. And I don't remember that being a thing at all that has ever been mentioned. But I don't know. And I'm guessing that has something to do with his domain claim. Yeah.
What makes you think that?
Because everything has to do with this man's domain claim.
Okay. Sounds a little, I mean, that's fine. I'm not going to say paranoid, but...
I mean, it doesn't make sense.
That he only has an eye? Like one eye?
No, just his domain, that whole situation. It seems like that, he got his familiar and his domain within seconds of each other. Like, yeah.
Do you think you'll ever find out?
Yeah.
You don't think this is going to be like the sleeper of Pact?
The whole domain thing, or just Johannes's eye?
I don't know, Malia. I mean...
No, we're going to find out.
Okay, cool.
So then he asks Maggie questions, and question 1 is, are you going to take my author? And she's like, no. And I'm like, yay! And he's like, but can I convince you to? And she's like, yeah, you probably could, but I'd fucking hate you anyway. And fair. And then he asked the question we've all been thinking. Wildbow's like, here, I'm going to tease you with a bunch of shit you don't know, but I'll answer one thing, and I'll make it vaguely unsatisfying, but at least you'll know. And it's very much in Maggie's character, and that was fun. So Maggie cannot swear because she gave up the sharpest part of her tongue to a goblin for info on how to bind superior goblins. And I think it's funny that she's surprised that Johannes wants to know and like all that stuff, but it's just like, what the fuck? It was really good. And that makes sense as to why it's like a physical thing. Like, she no longer has that part of her speech. It's frustrating that even after this clear demonstration of how you can give very abstract things away, she was not more careful.
Yeah.
But whatever.
I mean, she's relatively new.
Yeah.
But
I think one of the reasons why I'm somewhat confident that people can beat Johannes is that he really, really wants this like no one practitioner to be on his side. And I mean, I guess something power, and he doesn't really have like any practitioners who are his allies, but Maggie doesn't have a lot, or Checkers doesn't have a lot going for them right now. And fucking with Fairy Court and different things seems like maybe it's more of a hassle than it would be worth just to have like this one person.
Yeah.
Because then, you know, after she's like, I'm gonna take this other stuff and give you some of it back, he's like, no, but really tell me why you said no. And she's basically like, you remind me of Lucifer. And I'm like, yep, fair.
Like, harsh, but that is fair.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what they're saying, because they kind of like avoid saying it. Because she's sort of like, yeah, like tempting a angel or convincing an angel to whatever. There's only like one other person I can think of that's done that, which like almost certainly Lucifer, right? Like, yeah, I don't know. But then at the end, Maggie or Buttsack was gonna say it like after Faisal teleports them away, because she's like, oh, was he mad because I compared him to whatever? But like they get interrupted for something. And I'm just sort of like, is that a hint to like the fact that if somebody says Lucifer in the story, like shit's gonna go down? Or is it just like a way of kind of continuing the funny joke without Wildbow feeling like he was like spelling it out for the reader in a way that would make it, you know, kind of ruin it? Or what? Because we know names are powerful. We know saying demons' names are powerful. But I don't know. Or I'm just like misreading this and it's not a Lucifer thing. It's like a Blake thing, or I don't know.
I mean,
unclear.
I'm looking at that part again just to see, but I think you're probably kind of on the right track, maybe. But maybe not. You sounded like that clarified something for you. That was not the intent. Great. Okay. So I was like, wow, I wonder what you got from that, because I said absolutely nothing.
I just gotta, have confidence in my thinking abilities or something. Speaking of having confidence in my thinking abilities, the next part, I very much misread what was happening in my excited desire for hints at confirmation. And so, yeah.
That's funny. I think, okay, sorry, I'm just like, I think it probably is Lucifer. But
cool.
Okay, I don't know why I was being coy, but I felt like it. Sometimes it's fun just to be coy for the sake of coyness. Like koi fish. I don't know. So Checkers gets things set up and performs a sort of domain-esque ritual in order to claim her new name, and she has no challengers. Woo!
Yeah, so I was like fairly certain. Can't even say this out loud. At one point I was like convinced that I was being given confirmation, or I was about to be given confirmation that there was a demon under Hillsglade House.
I know, you really, really want that.
I want it so bad. Okay, this is why. So we explicitly point out we're by Hillsglade House, right? Which always like gets my radar, my antenna up. And then I didn't get what she was doing really, but you know, we go and we're doing things and whatever, and then there's a bomb, and then there's cracks everywhere, right? And so instead of making what was probably or almost certainly the correct conclusion, and concluding that this was a spirit world thing and that she had fucked herself up by detonating an explosion near her and that she was falling to pieces, I was like, she is broken through into the demon's realm. Because at one point she explicitly talks about the spot on the floor which opened up into some seemingly bottomless pit, and I was like, demon, demon.
Malia.
Pretty sure that I was wrong. On my second read through, it very much felt like a spirit world,
like a maybe not
cracks
a demon. Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I just wanted her to see eyes down there.
So you think that was opening into the spirit world or something? Or
well, the cracks. I was reading it real fast because I was like, "What's happening?" And so, yeah, okay. Well, I'll go from the beginning. So she's going to fuck up some goblins. She circles the building with a chain. Buttsack is inside for some reason, and she's like, "I'll blow him up too." And I'm like, "That seems kind of rude, but I guess you didn't promise not to." And so
there you go.
Yeah, so she I guess like has like C4 or some sort of explosive device from Andy that she packs into a bucket with marbles, which rude, and steel wool, and detonates it inside the house that she's surrounded with chain, and tells Buttsack that he'll live. And I was kind of surprised she was so confident by that, but I guess goblins are hardy.
They're pretty hardy, right? I feel like they're hardy.
And I just didn't quite get this, but this is like, I'm thinking it's claiming the space as her own, kind of like Verona having sex in the house or whatever and beating up those people in the house. This is like her and goblins hate each other. And let's claim that.
Let's claim it.
And so then it's like there's cracks running through everything. And so I'm pretty sure that what this is it's like the vestiges had a bunch of cracks in them. I think Maggie Checkers has almost pushed herself too far, and herself is crumbling, and so she sees the cracks, and they're a manifestation via like the spirit world or whatever of the fact that herself is crumbling.
Okay.
And so yeah, so then she makes this chain circle. She makes a goblin blood circle, and she makes a chalk circle, and she sits in it, and there's a bunch of goblin parts everywhere.
Yeah.
And then she draws some more circles for stuff that represents herself and connections that she has. So there's the scarf for her dad's, the phone for her mom, the goblin blood X for her hometown, her pipe shotgun for killing goblins, the domain book for Blake, and then 3 drops of her blood for Molly. And this was another point where I was very excited because she just said the word Molly, and I thought she was like powering something and summoning Molly and was gonna like fuse with Molly.
That.
It feels like that's not happening. But yeah, so this chapter got me in like 2 things where I was like, what? And I read very fast and it was a thing. But yeah, so then she hangs out for a bit, she eats some stuff. I'm thinking like to bolster herself and get her strength back in case anyone does decide to challenge this. And so then she lays a claim to Mags, and anchors herself with the connections that she has, but like later says like that she won't really have her dad's because I guess Maggie Holt still has her dad's in a large way.
Yeah.
And she's like, I want to be, the wild card, the neutral party, a messenger, a deciding figure, and like explicitly ties herself to Jacob's Bell, which is interesting because she fucking hates Jacob's Bell, but I guess she figures this is her best way to have a role in the universe or whatever. So Sandra and Johannes show up and no contest it, which was nice. And Peggy shows up. I don't know how Patrick knew about this, when to show up, but fairy something. Very and also probably she's like severing claims and things that he would have against her, kind of. Yeah. So he could probably tell. True. And yeah, he's like, oh, I very nearly had you, and you're not worth it anymore or something. And then he leaves and she's like, I'm going to kill you. And I'm like, okay.
This is nice.
Yeah. Oh my God. And then Mara, like, I really like don't want to find Mara exasperating, but I fucking do.
Interesting. Why is that?
She's just such a pain in the ass. Like I guess this sort of reminds me of Rook, except like she's not claiming a space in the universe that will forever fuck over others. She's literally just like, I'm trying to stop myself from falling apart and I'm claiming a name. And Mara's like, what if I hate you, white girl? And it's like, yeah, we fucking get it. Like,
Yeah.
just
Yes.
like fucking go, like move on, like go away,
Go
like
fuck off.
just like, you know, like white people coming to the Americas really, really, really fucked over a lot of people in a serious and very bad way. And
Mhm.
I think it's fair that Mara hates this. And even maybe that Mara hates white people. But just like fucking don't be a bitch in this instance for no reason. Like, I don't know. It
No.
just, yeah. And then she's like, I will have a harder life this way. And I'm like, will you? Like, because her other options are, I guess, to side up with Johannes, in which case, sure, or to cease to exist, which seems harder.
Well,
but
you wouldn't be living if you ceased to exist.
I'm not sure that you can have a harder life if the thing you're comparing it to is just like no life at all. I don't know. It's both harder and easier because it is life, whereas the other one's not. I don't know. But yeah, but then so I noticed that Briar Girl doesn't show up and none of the Behames show up because I know that like Laird and the children are off in Toronto right now, presumably, but like there are other Behames in town. And so that's weird.
A little odd.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so no contest for everybody. Then Rose and her group show up and they also state no contest. And then Mags asks where the fuck Blake is, and no one has a clue what she's talking about.
Yeah. Mags describes her as Rose Thorburn out of the mirror, and that should have clued me in immediately that she knew or remembered, but it didn't. I think I was reading too fast. And then I got excited by the fact that Ty has Evan presumably on his shoulder because I was like, familiar. And I didn't picture Tiff as tall, so that was an interesting descriptor. And then like Alexis is smoking, and that sucks. And yeah. But it's nice that like Rose helps her up. Like it seems like Rose has fondish memories of Maggie or something. I'm wondering, she says she heard what happened, but I'm wondering, like, does that mean she knows about Paggy? Like, what did she hear happened exactly? But all the cracks are gone, and so I'm assuming this is herself is secure and confirmation that whatever, she's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so why does Maggie, not Maggie, I'm still gonna call her that on accident forever.
Do you like Mags or Checkers? I can see Mags is probably better for her.
Yeah. But so Mags remembers Blake. How does Mags remember Blake? Because the timeline of this was very hard to follow. Partially because she went into the domain, and I don't remember exactly how long Blake was in Toronto, and blah blah blah.
Sure.
And so, like, maybe she was doing her ritual thing already when Blake got eaten, or maybe she was maybe Paggy had already taken over so much of the connection that it was like Isadora who was able to remember and retain some stuff because her connection to Blake wasn't as strong. And so, Checkers at the time, her connection wasn't as strong, maybe. It seems to have something to do with the fact that she also like makes her connection to Blake part of reclaiming her name, and no one contested that, but which kind of makes me think that he got eaten while she was in that ritual. But how fast did they get back to Toronto or back to Jacob's Bell? I don't know. I was a little bummed to see them all there. Like Ty go work with Diana and the rest of you just like go back to your lives or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah. What does it mean? We just don't know.
We don't know. I mean, we might know, but we might not know. I mean, well, I don't know. Like, yeah. So if you think about it, like her connections have been getting all fucked up, right?
Uh-huh.
And like she was fading, and so much to where like even her connection to Buttsack, he was kind of not really listening to her much at the end because he was like,
Right. He didn't
you
have
know.
to prevent being Forsworn. Right.
Yeah. So if her connections were getting that fucked up, then like it's already kind of fucked up to Blake. And that like the whole thing with her, like, I don't know, depending on how do you think how does work? Like
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not sure if the like eating the connections first and then eating the thing is like the vital key that makes you forget them. I guess that would make sense.
Mhm.
I mean, we know that Isadora like resisted that to some extent, partly because her connections weren't as strong.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, so that's the best guess, is that Maggie's nest was so fucked up that when it solidified, like there wasn't much to eat
Yeah.
in the connection to Checkers.
Mhm.
But Checkers still had the memories.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really didn't expect for someone to straight up just remember him, and that's an
Yeah.
interesting wrinkle.
Yeah. So I guess like is that gonna like what is that gonna mean?
I mean, presumably she'll tell them about him, and then I don't know. Hopefully, it'll help
Yeah.
the 3 baby practitioners to feel more of a sense of something.
True.
And Evan, oh Evan, Evan. Yeah,
I know, poor Evan. I mean, they're not going to magically remember him, though. They're just going to be like,
right.
okay, it's like this guy, apparently, that we cared about somewhat, or maybe didn't care about. Who knows?
I mean,
But
I guess. I mean, I think though that like they know what Or does.
yeah,
Like they know that it eats people, and so hearing like, okay, like Blake went off with you, and like that's enough to put those pieces together. And so maybe being, like a lot of the stuff about them losing it or whatever was just about like not being able to like fit things together and constantly trying to remember something. And I think maybe it's a lot easier to accept like, okay, like here are some details about this person and I don't remember them, but like this is a little bit to help fit into that hole or whatever. I don't know.
true.
I feel like this is somehow going to conflict with Rose, but I don't really know how.
It'll be interesting. So, in a way, I guess, like, this means that Blake has to stay in the story, at least in some way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, because I really just thought
That was it.
that Blake was going to influence the story in ways that the reader understood the whole time, but like he'll like more textually be there, which will be interesting.
Yeah. So conflict with Rose, Evan possibly being sad, more sad about it. So all right, could be interesting. So any other thoughts
on these chapters? No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right, well, we're at the end of the arc.
Woo!
So just looking back, what does signature mean? I guess now
yeah, I mean,
more context.
Yeah, Maggie loses her name. She gets one back. She claims her name. She claims her signature as her own. We learn a little bit about like Johannes and his signatures, I guess, a domain, an implement, a familiar. Those are all sort of things you've marked and claimed. There's a lot of tension about the Lord claim and all of that. And those all feel, related to signature stuff. Yeah, and then the interesting thing where Mags is no longer bound by a lot of the stuff that Maggie promised or whatever. Your signature being something that manifests your intent to be bound by the terms of a contract or whatever. And now that it's no longer her signature, she is not bound, and that's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. It was interesting. I feel like it's a rare Wildbow arc that doesn't have an interlude.
Yeah.
But also, we sort of got an interlude at the very beginning because we got a long butt sack part.
We got a long butt sack part
in the first part of the first chapter.
It's a lovely sentence.
So that felt interlude enough.
Yeah, it kind of did, didn't it?
Mhm.
All right, so I guess where's this going?
Yeah, so I don't know, like I've been thinking like, oh, this is gonna be a Maggie arc, and then we're gonna switch to someone else's perspective. But like we might not. I mean, like Rose et al. Are back in Jacobsbell. We might just keep going with like, seeing what's up, seeing whatever. I mean, I'm hoping we switch. I like the idea of continuing to switch perspectives, like one an arc maybe, and maybe coming back to another Maggie arc or whatever later, because I definitely want to know more about what's up with Mags. But I want to see from the baby practitioner's perspective, and Rose, and maybe one of the Behames or Duchamps or whatever. I'm curious as to the other shit going on, I guess.
Sure. Okay. All right. So I guess we kind of touched on this a little bit, but we're going to do our pale and comparison section. And you wrote down, I think this is a good idea, to talk about like people's plans to fix the practice. So like Johanna's, what the heck Grandma Rose is doing, as you said, Charles's fucking plan, and then Miss. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that people are not satisfied with the status quo, right? Or lots of people aren't, and they all have different ideas about what's wrong and how to fix it.
Yeah.
We don't know much about Grandma Rose's plan. Or at least I don't understand much about Grandma Rose's plan.
Sure.
She seems to not like being bound to stick to deals her ancestors made. And like that's one of the big things she kind of tempts Eamon with, but then I don't know what else. Johanna seems to be very pro Seal, very anti-other. Whereas Charles and Miss are both very anti-Seal. Charles basically because like I don't know that Charles had a particular affinity toward others before Kennett, and even now I'm not sure that he necessarily cares. It's more about the Forsworn, which is a totally fair group of people to care about. And then there's Miss, who is like, this is fucked and others don't deserve to be treated this way. And so, yeah, I mean, we talked about it earlier, but Johannes' whole like, let's do this really fucked up thing for good ends or whatever reminds me a lot of Charles. Although Johannes, I don't think sees the others as people, whereas Charles, I think, has to somewhat admit that practitioners are people, even if he doesn't fucking care.
Yeah. Even if he doesn't fucking care, that's fair.
But yeah, these stories seem to be a lot about power structures and marginalized groups, and how to like systems that would change the world or whatever. I mean, Johannes seems to be like, let's just accelerate what's already happening, as opposed to like, let's undo this because it's shit. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, he's a kind of two sides of the same coin in a way. All right. This is our most favoriteest part, and you're probably least favorite part, but we are here for Malia's bold and specific prediction.
Woo!
So. Woo!
Yeah, I kind of want to predict who the next arc perspective will be, and it's really like I don't know, but I'm trying to decide if like Tiffany or Alexis would be a more like, maybe Ty, maybe Rose, maybe Penny, maybe that one Duchamp who sucks. Hopefully not her. Well, she'll probably not suck by the end of it if it's her. Okay, I'm gonna say the next arc's perspective will be Ainsley Behame.
Ainsley Behame. Okay. I like this prediction. Are you going to try to be predicting, you think, every arc, like which next person is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, if the next one is Mags, then I'm not sure that I fully understand. Like maybe we're just sticking with Mags till the story's over. But if it does switch up, I think that'll be a fun thing, is to try to predict Because like maybe we're ready to head back to Rose and the baby practitioners since they're back in Jacob's Bell, but I'm curious as to like what the Bahams have been up to and whatever. Like I'm not, yeah, I don't know.
Well, I will say I'm really excited for you to see like this next person because I think they have a really interesting perspective. And yeah, I think it'll take it might take a minute for you to realize who it is because I don't think they spell it out for you immediately. But
interesting.
Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it, or at least yeah. So I know we talked about this a little bit, but just like to see, just because I think this should be part of the prediction thing as well. Like, do you mind kind of spelling out again, like what you think Blake is basically going to play a part for like the rest of the story?
Okay, yeah. So, it still seems like, Jacob's Bell is the center of the story, the conflict between practitioners over who will establish a lordship, and part of that being Hillsglade House as a factor. And so, I mean, we have the issues of Rose became the heir in her time, or in her memories timeline, whatever, not Molly. And Molly's dead in this one, but her echo, who is mute, still exists. There's Mags, who both has connection to Molly and Blake, and we'll probably talk to, like, her connection wasn't, I mean, she kept mentioning the Thorburns, but, like, she wasn't like, oh, and Rose, who's wonderful, and I care about her. It was always Blake, right? And I think that the baby practitioners will struggle with, I don't know, Rose having taken Blake's place, with like maybe Rose will struggle with the fact that she didn't tell herself what was up. I don't know, like part of it is weird if we're just like straight up leaving Toronto behind forever, but again, we might do that. Oh fuck, Paige has to come back. Yeah, I mean, I think just like the memory of Blake is going to mess with the balance of things, as he always did.
Yeah. Okay. I like it. Trying to think. Any other interesting predictions or things you want to mention?
Should I have a thought about? God, I was trying to think like the Lord contest, who would win, and I can't really see Sandra or Johannes winning. Oh fuck, Duncan's gonna come back. Duncan will not be the Lord of Jacob's Bell.
All right. All right. Very cool. Okay, so let me see. I haven't thought of a new discussion question yet. I don't know if Malia has, but we're gonna go over our previous discussion question, and just in a continuing display of laziness on my part, I have not written them down the responses, so I'm going to read them off of Reddit. 'Cause I don't think we got any on Discord, or at least I don't remember them. So
I couldn't find any, so sorry if there was.
Okay, well, you guys need to get a Reddit account then, or I don't know, or tweet stuff. But our previous discussion question was, if you were handed a letter right now and you had to keep reading it and get to shelter, how fast could you go? How long would you have to travel, and would you survive? So we had Violet Faith. They said that they were in their house when they read that, but they're saying right now, I think I would survive if my house were actually sanctuary. I'd be doomed in Checker's situation though. Kippo's 21. They're saying, she says she's a bit of a speed reader, so she would definitely skim and therefore finish the letter quite quickly. But she thinks she might be able to make an argument based on the sender of the letter, that there are further messages inside the letter that she didn't understand the first time. So she thinks she could get away with reading it a good few times as she puzzled over word choices and tried to figure out hidden intentions. Argument would come down to multiple definitions of read, as there's the surface level reading of a text and the further deeper readings that could take hours to nut out. Ultimately, though, she doesn't think there would be anywhere around her that she would consider shelter from anything supernatural, so she'd likely become a dead post relatively quickly. And I should have read this part first, but I didn't, so my bad. So I'm just gonna read the PS. It says, PS, please mark down my name as the queen bitch is back. Thank you very much and love you both very much. Well, thank you.
We're glad you're back.
We are glad you're back. The queen bitch. All right. Next is Orbital Oracle. Say that 5 times fast. Orbital Oracle. They would absolutely not survive. They're a fast reader, so the letter wouldn't last them long. And they're a fast walker, but also very uncoordinated, even when not trying to read something. So they'd either finish the letter too quickly or trip over something and immediately get mobbed by goblins. Next, Weltonator says, listen to this episode while driving, so not an ideal situation to not be able to take my eyes away from a letter. That is true. Imagining a Mad Max style car chase where I'm being pursued by gremlin vehicles on the highway while having to hold a letter up so I can see my mirrors and out the windshield while also holding onto the wheel and navigating mundane traffic and fending off sabotage from the goblin that presumably got into my car to give me the letter. So they end by saying, don't text and drive. Goblins will kill you and fairy will steal your name. That is a good lesson for us all.
Yeah.
Just to hold on to. Don't text and drive. Don't read and drive. Don't eat and drive. Now, I mean, you can eat and drive actually. But just like have a hand free to actually do the driving part. That's the important thing. But nothing where your eyes have to be anywhere but the road. Ace of Sword answered our discussion question. They said, well, they're home right now, so I guess they're fine. But they said, but if I was handed a letter and had to keep reading it while walking, I think my odds would be decent. I used to read books in every spare moment during high school, including walking to the next class. In addition, to it always being fairly crowded, there's always a risk of someone thinking it would be hilarious to trip me. By the time people actually started trying, I'd already gotten good enough at navigating while reading, and I was pretty much able to avoid everything without looking up from the page or slowing down from a normal walking pace. It was over 10 years ago, though, so I'm probably not that good anymore. I used to read while walking down the stairs, and I think I talked about that last episode, but yeah, I used to read all the time, so I don't think that I had to read while trying to navigate obstacles or being tripped, though. So props to you. That's pretty impressive. All right. I think that's all our discussion question answers. Did you come up with a discussion question, or are we just saying no, ain't happening? We're already late. This is like we're supposed to have released it this morning.
It's fine.
And we're still recording it, so
better late than canceled.
Better late than canceled. Better late than eaten by Better late than mobbed by goblins. Better late than being stuck in Johannes's domain. Better late than being sucked in under the house by the demon. I could keep going.
It's probably the worst one, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the bad one.
Well,
come up with your own creepy ass maze thingy like Johannes, I guess, or just listen to, I don't know, just have a good day.
I'm curious about people's I've already talked about it like 3 times or whatever, but the whole like Charles and Johannes and Miss and like and justifying the means and whatnot. I mean, people are excited to talk about Charles now. So if anyone has like interesting thoughts on Johannes's plan as we know it and Charles's, I'd be interested. I don't know if that's too spoilery though for me.
Ooh, I thought of something.
Okay.
Because you know how we have like the Pied Piper pipes?
Mm-hmm.
Like how about think of like something from like a fairy tale or like even popular culture, like I don't know, some myth or something, and think of that in terms of one of our 3 rituals, either as an implement or if you're thinking of a specific place like a domain. Let's do an implement that makes it more less broad. Think of an object from a fairy tale or popular culture, and how would that work as an implement? And would you take that as an implement, or would it be really creepy and terrible?
I I like that a lot. That's very fun. Like
All right, great.
the spinning wheel from Rumpelstiltskin or something.
Ooh, I like it. The glass slipper from Cinderella. The weird coffin thing that Snow White had to lay in when she died.
I was thinking the poison apple, but yeah, that too.
That I mean, that's probably what most people would have thought. But I don't know why I thought of the coffin. Okay. I mean, either one, anything like that would work. Feel free to take those examples. I'm gonna stop blabbing on because, as everyone knows, I do that. So we're gonna just go to the outro, and we got there in the end. We got the discussion question, and yeah, it's gonna be good. So thank you for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave a rating and review. To help support our podcast, go to patreon.com/doofmedia. And if you'd like to support Wildbow as he continues to write fantastic stories, go to patreon.com/Wildbow.
You can follow the pod on Twitter at Pale Comparison or send us an email at paleincomparisonpod@gmail.com. Keep an eye out in our Reddit thread keep an eye out for our Reddit thread in r/parahumans, where you can answer our discussion question and share your thoughts on this episode. In addition, if you would like to see all my predictions laid out, check out our episode description for a link to a prediction tracker. Next episode, we will be covering chapters 9.1 and 9.2.
All right, this is a fun fact I've seen circulated around on Reddit. I finally looked into it, and it's kind of funny. In 1994, a 75-pound bag of cocaine fell out of a plane and dropped right into the middle of a crime watch meeting in Florida. And it was actually the first meeting of that neighborhood crime watch group. Apparently, the plane that had dropped that cocaine bale had dropped a half a ton of cocaine, like in different bales, before landing at the airport. So quite a few little cocaine love bombs were dropped everywhere. One of them crashed, I think, through the roof of a home, and another one actually smashed like pretty much right next to or right by a church, and ended up slamming into a Cadillac in the church parking lot, which dented that, which was probably a really interesting insurance claim. But it is Florida, so I mean, maybe they already
Maybe it's
have
standard.
Maybe it's standard. That place is weird.
Yeah. This reminds me of a plug. So
does it? Okay, that's
yeah.
great.
So I've started listening to the Kingslingers podcast. I have not read The Dark Tower, and I'm not sad to say this, but you might be sad to hear it, that this podcast has convinced me that I do not want to read these books, but I plan on continuing to listen to the podcast because it's fun to hear them talk about him.
Why,
and
is it scary
it's
or
an interesting plot? It's very violent and graphic in a lot of ways, and like disturbing and upsetting, but so far isn't like horror.
Okay.
I also currently hate the main character, even though Scott and Matt keep being like, maybe Scott's like, I've read them all so many times that I love him. And Matt's like, I don't know if I love him or if I hate him or what I'm supposed to do. And I'm like, nah, fucking hate him. Anyway, if you want to know why that reminds me of Kingslingers, you should go listen to it. You'll find out when they start talking about the second book in the Dark Tower series. So
I want to know if it's the cocaine.
It's an interesting listen.
If it's the plane, if it's Florida, if it's, I mean, I don't know. That's
the Cadillac insurance claim.
The Cadillac insurance claim. Maybe that's it. But I'm intrigued now. I haven't listened to that podcast because I haven't read the book, but maybe I should just do it. And
yeah, I don't remember if it was Jonaleth or who it was on Discord, but they were like, yeah, I don't read these books, but I listen to the podcast and it's great. And like, I was like, wow. Like, what a concept!
What a concept! I would not have, thought of doing that, but
it's a fun time.
That's all right. Well, thank you, Malia. I appreciate that plug, and yeah, I really am curious about what the heck that reminded you of that story now. So, all right, well, have a good week. We'll try to get this episode up hopefully tonight. If not, I I don't know, sometime soon. I mean, once you're listening to this, it's up already, so who cares? But all right. Good night. There. Goodbye, guys.
Bye.